rocky ground, even on thorn bushes, even on places where it seems so very unlikely that these seeds will ever be able to take root. Well, today we hear a parable that Jesus told shortly thereafter, after that first parable, a story of another farmer who seems to have also some strange ways of tending his fields. It's a simple story of a farmer who plants some seed, and when a few days later weeds start growing up along with the wheat, the farmer's servants come and ask him, well, how did this happen? Where did these seeds come from? And he says, an enemy has sown these. And they say, well, wouldn't you want us then just to go pull up those weeds? And the master says, no. If you pull up the weeds, you run the risk of pulling up the wheat with them, and then that will be no purpose. Why would we do that? Just let them grow together. And then when the time is right, we will harvest them. We'll take care of the weeds then. Okay? So that's the story. But let me ask you, friends, what kind of gardener doesn't pull up weeds? I mean, I told you last week I'm not a gardener, but I'm the son of a gardener. My father loved his gardens and spent a lot of time on it, and now and then he would recruit me to come and help him, and oftentimes one of the jobs that he would give me was to pull weeds. My problem was, though, I couldn't always tell what were the weeds and what were the plants he didn't want me to pull, and inevitably I would always pull up at least a couple of plants that I wasn't supposed to pull, and my dad would get very frustrated, and he'd say, you know, I have to go plant those again. Right? And so even I am not a gardener, but I know that when you see a weed, you pull it. Right? Assuming you know the difference between the wheat and the wheat. Now that's the critical question. Do you know the difference? Because that's the problem. It's hard to tell the difference between weeds and plants that you want to keep growing. And in fact, that's a big part of what drives this parable of the wheat and the weeds, because what we 21st century folks might not know is that the weeds that Jesus was no doubt talking about were a poisonous weed called the bearded darnel. And the thing about the bearded darnel that we need to understand is that in the early stages of its growth, it so closely resembles wheat that it was no means a simple thing of plucking one and keeping the good. They couldn't tell the difference. And then by the time you could tell the difference between the bearded darnel and the wheat, the roots were so tangled up underground that when you pulled the darnel up, it pulled the wheat up with it. So Jesus was talking about a real problem there that folks in those days could understand perhaps a little bit better. There was a reason why they didn't pull up the weeds. Because by the time they could tell whether they were weeds, it was too late to be able to do that. Now, that story then perhaps makes a little bit more sense to us, and in that sense it's not that strange to be told to leave the weeds. But we also need to remember that the purpose of Jesus' stories and parables was not to teach people about farming and gardening, but to teach people about the kingdom of God. This parable of the wheat and the weed was not told in the context of an agricultural seminar, but as a spiritual teaching to teach us something about God and us. And Jesus is talking about something more than actual gardening. Himself, Jesus says that the field is the world. We're not just talking about a little plot of land. We're talking about the entire world. And then he says that the good seed that was planted are the children of the kingdom, and the weeds are the children of the evil one. And when we understand this parable in those terms, we begin to see that the parable moves from being what seems like agricultural advice into something more profound, a statement about our need to tolerate one another and to live with one another, even when we do things to one another that seems like, well, of course, only a child of the devil would do something like that. It's a statement of tolerance and against religious pride that causes us to think that we are somehow better than other people because we believe. See, Paul says that the demons believe, and they tremble. Everybody believes something. It's what we do that counts. But we have sometimes this tendency to say, well, because I believe, because I go to church, because I don't do this or I don't do that, I'm better than somebody else. And Jesus is saying, no, you need to be careful about making that judgment about another person. You see, because what this parable tells us is that when we start dividing up between people, the good and the bad, according to our understanding of things, we get it wrong. We need to allow God to be God, to let Him take that responsibility. Let Him sort things out. And when the time is right, there will be a day of judgment, a day of recompense, a day of vengeance that God takes. And when God does it, God does a much better job than we ever will. And you'd be surprised who gets rewarded and who gets punished. See, we need to let God be God and leave the judgment to Him. Let Him tend His garden. Now, I got to tell you, we're not very good at taking that advice. Whether it's Christians killing Christians, which has happened over the many centuries, Christians, believe it or not, have killed the other Christians because they didn't believe the right way. Or whether it's Christians killing Muslims during the Crusades, or Muslims killing Christians, or Christians bombing abortion clinics or buildings, or dictators killing millions of people, or tribes trying to wipe out other tribes. We humans are sure prone to get convinced that we know just the people who need to be weeded out. Just the people who need to be gone, and then all our problems would be solved if we could just get rid of this group of people. Those weeds. Millions and millions of people have died over the centuries because we think we have the right to kill other people we don't like. And God weeps when we do that. And all of this comes from thinking that we have the right to play God, to judge, to exact revenge, and to destroy. And we should know, if we are students of the Bible, anytime human beings try to act like God, we mess things up. Let's let God be God. Let's us be wheat or weeds, whichever we are. So sadly, history is full of Christians using their faith as a cloak for this sort of pride and arrogance, which is strange, like I said, given that the Bible over and over again reminds us that God is God, and we're not. We're pretty good, perhaps, sometimes at being human beings, but we're terrible at being God. But even so, it is all too common for Christians to come off as if they think they are better than others, that they are immune from the foibles that plague other people. Sometimes the way that we Christians think about ourselves reminds me of the story of a Roman Catholic church that was planning to build a new building. And in that tradition, if you're going to build a new building, you've got to send the plans to the authorities in Rome, and they have to give their approval. And so this church sent their plans off to Rome and waited for a little while. And the plans came back from Rome, and they were not approved. And the only comment that was made about why it wasn't approved was kind of a strange one. Somebody wrote on there, are all the people who are going to this church going to be angels? Or are they angels? That was his way of saying it. He forgot one important thing about this church you didn't include any toilets. So if it was a church full of angels, you wouldn't need toilets. But if it's a church full of human beings, we need toilets, right? See, that's one of the great equalizers. We all put our pants or our clothes on one leg at a time, or whatever at a time. I've never worn a dress, so I don't know about that. But socks one at a time, stockings one at a time. And as long as you and I need toilets, we have more in common with each other than we have difference. Amen. Amen. And not to be too indelicate about it, but we better not imagine that our mess-ups don't stink just like everybody else's. I hope I'm not getting too real for you all this morning. As long as we need bathrooms, we understand we're all in the same place. And here's the other thing, because sometimes people who seem like weeds turn out to be wheat. Am I right? Yes. Sadly, also, sometimes people who seem to be wheat turn out to be weeds. Don't be so sure we know how to tell the difference. As we're growing up, as we go through our lives, as we learn and we grow, as God's prevenient grace is secretly working in our lives, it is hard for others to distinguish whether we are wheat or whether we are weeds. Sometimes people suddenly grow a whole new leaf or sprout a whole new branch we never saw coming. But guess who did? God saw it coming. A few years back, my parents told me that when I was in my early 20s, they were so concerned about me that because I wasn't really getting my act together, you know? You have a child, anybody have a child like that? They're just not getting their act together. My parents were so worried that they went and they talked to their pastor about me. And I think they wanted him to tell them, well, what can we do? How can we get this guy to just get his act together? How can we stop him from being such a weed? Getting all tangled up. And he said something too that they shared with me what he said, because they remembered it ever since. And I've remembered it ever since. And I've tried to repeat it to other families when they're worried about their children. And I've tried to keep it in my mind when my own children are causing me concern. He said something that I invite you to remember. He said, never judge your children until they are at least 25. I would say a lot longer than that, but never judge your children until they are at least 25. Some of us are late bloomers in God's good time. I'm still blooming. I don't know about you all. And as I think over my life, I can see the progress that by the grace of God I have been able to make in my life. I know that I'm one of those folks that sometimes along the way people might have said, oh, he looks like a weed, or he looks like somebody who was never going to amount to anything. But by the grace of God, I'm moving on. There's a song that the old folks used to sing. It says, I'm not what I used to be. I'm not who I want to be. I'm not done yet. God's not done with me yet. I can see the hand of God over my life. I can claim by faith that, as we read in Romans, I'm a child of God. I've been given the spirit of adoption, and I'm an heir and a joint heir with Jesus Christ, and I have a glorious future to look forward to. It may not look like it right now. Some of you know what I'm talking about. The Bible says that we are the children of God, but it does not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when he appears, we will be like him, for we will see him as he is. And that's my hope for myself and for you all this morning, that while it may not appear like much is happening, it may appear like we are little bits of weeds. God's working. And I know that many of you have that same testimony and hope. But you know what? When we say that about ourselves, guess what that means, brothers and sisters? That means that if it can happen to the likes of you and I, it can happen to other people as well. See, I tell you what, none of us started out as children of the kingdom. None of us started out as the wheat. The Bible says we were born sinful from our mother's womb. I came out of the womb a tare, a wheat. I know this? Not only because the Bible says it, but I know it from my own life. I never had to teach my children to be bad. Any of you have to teach your children to be bad? And it was the same when I was growing up, when I was a little child. I didn't have to be told how to be bad. I could do bad all by myself. And I still do bad all by myself sometimes. I don't know about you all. So we all started out as weeds. You see, in the natural world, weeds don't become wheat. But in the spiritual world, that happens all the time. And we receive that spirit of adoption that the brother Paul talked about. So if God is doing a work in the lives of people like you, me, us who are born weeds, don't you know that God can do a work in the lives of anyone else you might care to mention? And so, mother, maybe you got a son or daughter you are worried about. You're staying up late at night praying for them, and you wonder if anything good is ever going to be happening to them. And sometimes you might even be tempted to give up on them. And God says, let them grow. Don't give up on them. Pray for them. Love them. But let them grow. Let me tend them. Or brother, maybe the folks who live next door to you or above or below you vex you with their nastiness, and you are tempted to resent them, and you wish they would just shrivel away like a weed in the sun. God says, let them grow. Pray for them. Serve them. Let them grow. Or sister, maybe you have a coworker who was a backstabber. Those kind of folks who are always in line to try to get the credit that you deserve. And you wish they would just go away. You wish the angels would come up and pluck them up, because surely they're a weed. God says, never you mind. Let them grow. You do your job. Which includes being kind, and caring for others, and being honest, and putting in a good day's work. Let them grow. And we can do this, all of this, secure that when the right time comes, when all is said and done, God will do what God does. He will make righteous judgments. He will restore justice. He will make everything right. Things that were left undone will be done. And He'll do it so much better than you and I ever would. Let God tends God's garden, which for now is a garden with both